everybody, again. Welcome to another episode of YBMcast Tennessee. This week is really fun. I've got a really good baseball friend, normal friend, just somebody I really enjoy hanging out with. Travis Copley joining us this week. Kind of does a little bit of everything, and I've known him for, like I said, for quite a while. I'm gonna let Travis introduce him himself in a second. But in the meantime, I've known him coaching his kids. Got to coach with him a few times on occasion down in some tournaments. Big time guy with Old Hickory Bat Company. One of the founders with Showcase and Midland and all of those good things. But instead of me talking, Travis, introduce yourself, man. Welcome.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for having me. My name is Travis Copley. I'm currently the VP of Old Hickory Bat Company, just north of Nashville, Tennessee. Like Barron said, I've coached for a little over 20 years. I've got two boys that play. Actually, I have one boy that plays now. My college player just retired last weekend. But I've been through the coaching ranks. Played collegiately at Tennessee. Played 5 years of pro ball. Was one of the founders of Showtime, which has now become Midland, Tennessee, and here we are.
That is awesome. I got a list of questions we're going through. Nothing's crazy, nothing's tough. Matter of fact, it's just all baseball. That's what's so cool about this. I have no idea what I'm doing. We're sitting here talking baseball with guys who like to talk baseball.
Right.
When we met, Tanner was 16, going on to 17, and then went on to Rome State. That's the oldest you're talking about, who's just retired. Big, tall build, very similar to you. Could throw the ball, just a big kid. You've got one more, Tyson, Page High School, and also plays for Midland. He is 17 now, right? 16 going on 17, right there in that.
He is, yeah, he's 17. He's got that great summer ball birthday where he could play 16, but his graduating class is actually 25. So he will take advantage of the system and play 17 2 years in a row.
Why not? Big, wiry build.
Absolutely.
Kid can play. He's ready to grow into his body. Let's talk a little bit about kind of how Showtime really started. Showtime and Showcase in the Midland, and you're one of the founders of that. One of my biggest questions, and what we do a lot on this podcast specifically, is talk about just obviously youth baseball. Some of the younger guys, the 8 through the 12, and then once they turn 13 on the big field, all the way until 17, and kind of age out and figure out whether or not they're going to keep on playing into college. When did you start this? What age was it apparent that something needed to happen?
So there's actually two answers to that. So I finished up my playing career in 2002. And when I came back into town, I took a job that allowed me to coach during the summer. So I actually started off with a 12-year-old group that had, obviously none of my kids were part of it, and carried them through 17. Coming out of that, I guess with that last year I had them, Tanner was 1 or 2. I took a couple years off and then jumped back into rec ball at 4 and 5 with him. My first time through coaching at the amateur level, you kind of identified some red flags and some things with the travel ball, because we didn't have travel ball when I was growing up. And so you identify some red flags, some things you just really made your skin crawl. But then you found some things that you really liked about it too. The competition. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, it wasn't pulling teeth to get kids to show up at practice or games. They wanted to be there. It was something they wanted to pursue. And so you fast forward to Tanner, my older son's first couple of years of rec ball, and you had this group of kids, even at an early age, that, whether they wanted more in a good way, the parents wanted more in a bad way. There was just this level that wasn't there, because we had the rec ball or this uber competitive travel ball division that was traveling all over the country at 8 and 9 years old. And so myself and Randy Griggs and a couple other guys at the facility kind of got together and said, hey, is there a way to kind of do this different, where we can play a mix of rec ball, the development being a key piece of it, but then expand that into some competitive tournaments so these kids get to see what that's actually like before we throw them in the deep end at 12 and 13 years old. And so that was kind of the model to start with. We partnered with a couple really good facilities in town, gave us an indoor space for kids to work out when it rained. We were very fortunate that we weren't limited to the one day of ball practice a week and then one, maybe 2 games a week. We could kind of formulate our own schedule as an independent group, basically. And we were nonprofit. That we didn't want to make any money off of it, and that really spoke to honestly a lot more people than we ever thought that would speak to. So when you look at even today with most of our Midland teams at the younger age groups, they're playing that combined schedule. They're playing a rec ball schedule, and they're playing, depending on where they see themselves fitting, a certain degree of competitive travel ball as well. You take that up into 11, 12, especially 13 and 14, where it becomes really competitive. Those kids already have a taste of it. They're not overwhelmed by it. And they have a really good idea of where they fit at that time in the baseball universe.
I think that's a great answer. I know that right now, especially because I've had the 8-year-olds 2 years in a row. My son was kind of a younger 8-year-old, and we stayed. He was 7 when he played the first year, and we stayed and played 2 years of 8, very similar to what Tyson's going to do with 17, just on the whole other
Mm-hmm.
side of the spectrum.
Right.
And then I've had them when they're 9 and they're 10, and obviously I still do the 15, 16, 17s, and it's two totally different aspects of the game, competitive wise and just kind of understanding. But the scene today, there are teams everywhere in this travel space. Um, some good, some bad. You never really know what you're going to get. But how have you seen? And I can't imagine what it was like when you were starting, when it was just a few teams kind of rolling in and everybody's kind of uber competitive, and then people start moving into town, teams start popping up. How have you seen? Because you're still involved today with all of this stuff. How have you seen that environment change from when you started years ago with Tanner to kind of where it is now with some even the younger guys, even tryouts, how big it gets?
Right. And I don't know that it's changed a whole lot other than the volume. And I think that's what you're speaking to with the tryouts is the amount of kids that show up. Um, I think, if you were to put all the age groups from 8 to, let's say, 17 on a bell curve, it literally, the apex of travel ball seems to be at 11 through 14 age group. And I think on the front end of that, it's a lot of development. There you get the range of the open, the gold major, the gold minor, the silver major, silver, all that stuff. And then you hit this little area where whether it's kids get interest outside of baseball, we always said for years that the two biggest drop offs in participation that we saw were going into 10-year-old and going into 16-year-old. Because at 10, every kid at 9 got hit by a pitch. First time that's ever happened. And half of them were like, nope, not going to do it. I'm not going to stand up here and have somebody throw that little thing at me. All right, so you had to drop off there. And then at 15 to 16, you've got cars, you've got girls, and interests kind of go elsewhere. So that bell curve really apexes between 11 and say 10 and 15 is kind of where all that comes together. And for me, that is kind of the high point of a lot of really competitive teams, right? You could throw a stone in Middle Tennessee at a 12-year-old tournament, and you're going to have major teams and gold teams scattered throughout all those tournaments. Once you start getting into 15, 16, even 17, the number of teams start to condense. Kids want their summer back, per se. You get into high school and you've got football workouts in the summer, basketball workouts in the summer for your multi-sport guys, and they just aren't as available anymore. I think that's always been the trend, at least since travel ball's become popular, but it's just so flipping popular right now, and everybody wants to have their hand in it, that the volume of kids has been the big change with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Speaking of multi-sport athletes, we have a lot, especially in Tennessee. I mean, kids are playing everything in the world, and I think it's a good thing. It just makes you a better athlete right now. Eventually, we'll see when they get to be 16, 15, 16, 17, and they kind of narrow it down, figure out what they're actually good at instead of just hanging out on the football team to be with their friends. They know, well, baseball is really my sport. I'm going to go do that. Uh, Between organizations, and you mentioned this a minute ago, which is a big reason why I love Midland. And I'm part of it and I'm drawn to it. It's the nonprofit aspect of it, but there are so many good organizations that are out there that do similar things, not the same thing, but similar things. But what in your mind sets apart a really good organization from just a fly by night that you can just see it on the field? They're not going to be here next year, or this team's going to fold, or it's just because there's some really good stuff and there's some really bad things, but there's some key ingredients that set certain organizations apart from each other. What do you think?
I think the big one is priorities. And I think if you prioritize, as an organization, if you prioritize winning over everything else, you're not going to be around very long. Um, I know firsthand experience with my two boys. They're oversized for their age, and it's taken them a minute to grow into their body. Those kids didn't stand a chance of making a mid-level, much less an upper-level travel ball team until recently, until late in their kind of amateur career. Um, but a place like Midland gave them the opportunity to play on a B team or a scout team where they were still getting their reps. They were still playing against good competition, but it was leveled to where they were. So they weren't overwhelmed. They weren't discouraged. They were challenged and they wanted more and they wanted to figure out how to compete. And then that pays off at the end.
Yep, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, showing up at it's not just showing up at practice. There becomes a switch, right? And you
Right.
had it. It becomes a switch where you practice on your own. You're outside of practice. I need to get better at this. Individual drills, and then when I go to team practice, I'm starting to do some team things, make the team better. But individually, I want to work on my own, which is why the facility is so important to us, and the space that you have that you can practice when it's rained. It's rained all week outside. It's hard to get outside right now, but we're lucky enough to have an indoor facility where you can get these guys together, and even if it's 4 or 5 guys at a time, because we're still in high school playoff mode right now for a lot of kids. And but the kids who are not playing right now, or the ones who aren't dressing, they have a place to go and they have a place to continue to develop, so that when we hit the ground running in summertime, we're ready to go, especially for the big tournaments. And you and I share the same feeling about WWBA and going to MPI and all these things. It's difficult to go there with a must win approach, because
Right.
that's it's to do that, you're almost sacrificing. You're flying kids in. You got pitchers. You got all this stuff, but you want to be competitive. To win it is a little different exposure, and so that's where actually the first time you and I coached together was at WWA, and we've been to Lake Point together in Hoover, and to see you in the cage with the kids and talking, you can tell there's a whole lot of coach in you. Now you breezed over this when we started this that you were playing at UT, and I think that's you're selling yourself short, because you were on one heck of a team. And I hate to say that because I'm not a Tennessee fan. I can't stand it. But you breezed over it. Can you talk about those days and just kind of how it led up and what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, so I was there 95 through 98. Was very fortunate to be on the same team and even be roommates with guys like R.A. Dickey and Todd Helton, Augie Ojeda, Sonny Cortez, guys that definitely got into pro ball, had long careers in pro ball, and one of them is going to finally be immortalized in Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame this summer. So yeah, I was very blessed to have that opportunity to do that. Extremely grateful that I was able to contribute to those teams, because I definitely, from being a kid from a small town in Tennessee, I was not a household name when I got there. But being able to learn from those guys was huge for me. And not just from a playing standpoint, but the coaches that we had too. I still talk to one of our assistants almost weekly. He's checking on my boys, checking on what we're doing at Midland. He actually runs a facility in Knoxville now, and so they've got teams, and so we try to partner up with them and do some things. But all that was born and bred right out of that environment in Knoxville for those 4 years I was there.
That is so cool, because you still keep in contact with all these guys, and I think that's the thing about baseball that I love probably more than any other sport is I'm the most comfortable at home with my family and in the dugout. Those are the two places that I've always been the most comfortable. uh, you meet people that just don't go away, and it does you best friends for life. And I keep telling the little kids, the 10-year-olds, even some of the 16-year-olds, say you guys are making some of the best friends you have, and you have no clue. I mean, you're going to know these guys forever and ever. But speaking of the coaches who continue to call, because we all have those guys. We still have those coaches who made an impact in our life, and I'm sure you have probably more than one. But do you have one or two that just changed maybe your path or helped you navigate something to get where? Because man, that is not a small feat at UT, and you're being humble. I mean, you played, you were doing some big time things. Is there a couple coaches or something along the way that kind of navigated that path for you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I tell my boys all the time, like, you're going to play for guys or for people that, it's just like in the workforce. You love them, you don't love them quite so much, but then you realize later on that they always had your best interest at heart. And so I actually had a basketball coach in eighth grade, Coach Robinson, that was awesome. And I didn't know it at the time. That guy, I'd come home every day, like, why does this guy hate me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm doing the best the whole thing. And when we graduated eighth grade, my eighth grade graduation present for him was John Wooden's book on coaching. And he had written a note in there about, here's the reason I was so hard on you. And, all this. But at the end of it, he goes, I don't know if your future lies in basketball, but I do know you'll be successful in whatever you do because of your work ethic. And so that always stuck with me. And then when I got to college, my assistant coach, Larry Simcox, had no knowledge of that story, but I'm struggling. And he walks over, he goes, look, you're going to be fine. He goes, you work harder than anybody else. Just keep doing that and you'll be okay. And it just kind of took me back to that and it's just a theme that as coaches, that if we relay that to our kids, like there's ups and downs, especially in baseball. If your goal is to go out and get 3 hits or be uber successful every day, it's going to suck for you. Like that's not the way this game is built. Is built to be played. But if you can keep that mindset that every day you're working just as hard as you did the day before, or even a little bit harder, you're always going to find success in this game. And then after this game, you'll find it as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
very long way. Yeah, there are coaches that impact your lives that, whether you know it right then and there, or whether it takes you 20, 30 years to figure out, like, man, that dude was really smart. And I'm really grateful for how he pushed me when I thought he was upset with
absolutely, man. That is absolutely a fact. I mean, you go back and you look at notes that are written down, like you're talking about. When my father passed several years ago, and we went back and looked in boxes, and the entire time he had been writing letters, like physical letters. My dad was a letter writer for some reason to my high school coach. Just back and forth, back and forth. I had no idea, but they had this correspondence going, just talking about not even baseball, just things about me and grades and just all these things that need to add up and kind of how to guide your life, because baseball is all about that. I mean, it'll teach you about life really, really fast.
me. Right.
Goods and bads of it, man. Um, you have you've seen a little bit of every kind of aspect of this thing. Do you have maybe one or two pieces of advice for parents who are going through that transition right now, where some of their kids are turning in maybe middle school age and they're trying to make that team, and then they're trying to be competitive on that team or contribute to that team, and then it goes into high school and whatever else,
Right.
about kind of patience and understanding of how the whole process worked? Do you have any advice for those folks?
Yeah, I would, for me, it's keep in mind that this is a different process when you're talking about like the transition from, even not having a school team to a middle school team, then to a high school team. Keep in mind that that's a different process than what it is in the summer. Um, those teams, most of the good school teams, whether it's middle school or high school, are built on continual competition. So just because you don't earn the starting spot day one, that doesn't mean your competition's over for the season. You're competing every time you go out there. You take advantage of every opportunity you can get. You understand what a successful, what being successful in that opportunity means. Doesn't always mean getting a base hit or hitting the ball out of the park or striking somebody out. But work hard, keep competing, and take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded you, because they come in really different ways, really different shapes and sizes, and you don't know. And the first time, this saying, the ball's going to find you when you're not paying attention, right? So the first time you take a pitch off in the dugout because I'm not playing is the exact moment that coach looks over and goes, hey, Barron, you're in. And if you're not dialed in, that's a missed opportunity for you to get more playing time down the road, whether it's more that game, later that series, or it's your sophomore, junior, senior year with it. A little bit different summer ball. Summer ball, like, hey, we're just not good enough for this team. We're going to go find another team. We're going to go elsewhere with it. You can't do that in high school, right? So you've got to learn how to compete and how to work hard and how to continually do that even when things aren't going your way.
Yeah.
And then I'd also tell parents, just enjoy the ride, because everybody tells you this, but I'm living through it. Like, it's gone like that. You get a phone call, Dad, I'm done.
Boy, I do not look forward to that day. I hate that you're going through it right now, but man, I do not look forward to that day at all.
It was a lot of conversations. We were pretty well prepared for it, but it still hits hard when it actually happens.
Yeah. We got a few more minutes. I know you're busy, but I want to give you a chance, and mainly because I love talking about it too. But Old Hickory Bat Company fascinates me. What you do, I'm jealous like crazy that you do it for a living. Man, one of the biggest. You know what's really cool, and I meant to tell you this the other day, and I didn't have a chance, but I'm gonna tell you now. So our little 10-year-old team, we travel. Finally went out of state up to St. Louis, and they've got their bags on. It says Midland, and they're acting just like the older kids, the 16, 17. They got 4 or 5 bats. 2 of them are wood bats. They're all Old Hickory bat, and my boys swing them. You make the drop tens, the drop eight for the little guys, and we don't play any wood bat tournaments, but they've got them, and they're swinging them
Right.
in the cage, and they're starting to feel. When I make a really good swing, I don't feel anything on my hands, and that's what I want to feel with these wood bats. And so they're everywhere. I mean, and every time we go somewhere, they're popping up. The Old Hickory bat, Old Hickory bat, Old Hickory bat, showing up all over the major leagues. You've got some big time names. I mean, Trout, Max Clark, Jackson Holliday. I mean, Matt Olson, all kinds of people I know I'm forgetting that I'm sure you know. But how cool is your job?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty cool gig. It's something that honestly, I'm probably one of the few people around that can say when I got done with playing baseball that this is the first job I took. And the guys here were good enough to me to say, hey, the one thing we don't have, they were a new company at the time. I swung on my last 3 years playing pro ball. There was like 4 of us in pro ball that had even heard of Old Hickory at the time. They said we really don't have a pro anything. So if you want to set that up and develop it and run with it, go for it. And so that's been my job for 20 years now, is kind of overseeing the pro side. I'll dabble in, retail and direct stuff, and a little bit of production here and there when I'm needed. But by and large, I get to stay in the game that I love, and deal with some pretty cool people along the way.
That is really neat, and I get jealous because we'll text every once in a while. We go back and forth. I'm a Kentucky guy, and he's a Tennessee guy, obviously. So we'll be joking back and forth whether or not it's basketball and the cats are playing the balls, or this year baseball. I mean, 1 and 2. How cool is
Mm-hmm.
that? And we'll text, and I'll send a message. Hey, what are you up to? Well, I'm at the home run derby. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me, man. It's like, not are you at the home run derby? You're
It's
down on the field. You're taking batting
yeah,
practice. Like, gosh,
there's some good perks to the job for sure. For sure.
it's
You
awesome.
get to see a lot of cool things.
For those who don't know and are watching this, man, if you've got Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff, go look them up and just look at some of the bats that they make, some of the guys that they represent. The bats are almost even work of art. Matter of fact, I have fungos, and usually I try to get a couple fungos from you because I like to keep one really nice and clean so I can show it and display it because they're pretty as they could be. But man, alive are they functional. That's the best fungo I've ever had. So we
Appreciate that.
love it. Yeah, man, absolutely. Travis, anything else before we take off?
No, man, if you got anything else for me, fire away. Like, we sit here and I mean, we go back enough. We know we can sit here and probably do a 4-hour podcast just rambling on about baseball. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of what's the new one now, the whole NIL controversy with perfect game and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
That would
we're gonna
make me
have
a
to
little
come.
interested. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to come. We'll have to come back. We'll do a part 2 because I know we're up against time, but we'll have to do this again because there's plenty of stuff that you and I can talk about, especially NIL stuff. I mean, that's a hot topic right now, anyway. So,
that
but
NIL space across the board they can try to regulate it all they want. It's the wild, wild west right now. I mean,
It is.
anything and everything is crazy.
That's really cool. Travis, man, I appreciate you. Love you to death. Tell Chris and everybody I said hello. Everybody, thank you. Travis, join us next week. We'll be back with another episode of YBMcast Tennessee. Facebook, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Everybody knows how to do that. Share it with somebody. They might like to listen to it. I don't know if they do or not. I don't like listening to myself talk sometimes too, so that's why I ask the guests to talk a lot. But give us a chance, and we really, really do appreciate everybody for joining us. See y'all next week.
Thanks, Coach.